The rain was light but steady, the kind of soft, persistent drizzle that seemed to mourn alongside the living. Rows of white headstones stood in perfect formation across the green Virginia hills, a silent army that bore witness to the nation's grief. The funeral of General Nathaniel Royce, a four-star legend and the last of a generation, was underway. Black cars lined the road like armored sentinels. Flags rippled half-mast in the wind. A brass band played slow, deliberate notes that seemed to hang in the mist. It was a day for protocol.
For folded flags and crisp salutes, for generals and dignitaries, secretaries of defense, and stone-faced soldiers in rows. It was not a day for unexpected guests, certainly not for a stooped old man with weather-beaten boots, a limp and a duffel.
Bag slung over his shoulder like an afterthought. But he came anyway. He wasn't in the program. His name wasn't on any list. He didn't carry a badge or ID or even a suit. Just a threadbare military cap, faded olive with a tattered unit patch nearly rubbed away. When he reached the checkpoint at the entrance to the main grounds, two young military police officers stepped in front of him. One hand went to a holster, the other to a clipboard. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to stop right there." The old man looked past them, toward the casket, toward the flag, toward the memory. He said nothing, just stared. Something in his eyes didn't belong to the present. It was 1,000 miles and 50 years away. "Sir," the guard repeated, firmer this time. "You can't go in there." He tried again. Just one step. The guards moved in unison, blocking him. One placed a hand on the man's chest. Another whispered something into a radio. And that's when it happened. The colonel overseeing the ceremony, standing yards away near the honor guard, stiffened as he received the transmission in his earpiece. He turned his head sharply toward the commotion. Then slowly, deliberately, he stepped back and made a call. Moments later, the entire funeral procession halted. From among the line of officers came a tall figure draped in medals and stars, the gold braid of a four-star general glinting under the gray sky. He walked with purpose, toward the guards, toward the old man, toward history. Everything stopped. And in that sudden silence, broken only by the soft breath of rain and the distant call of a mourning dove, something deeper than ceremony stirred. A bond forged not in ranks or ribbons, but in blood, fire, and decades-old promises. Arlington National Cemetery, Virginia, Tuesday, 0900 hours. The bugle had not yet sounded. The air was thick with formality. Officers straightened their jackets for the fourth or fifth time. Wives of admirals adjusted black veils. Young soldiers stood stiff as stone, hands gloved, boots polished to a mirror shine. Somewhere beyond the trees, a helicopter circled. Part of the security grid, no doubt. This funeral, after all, was not just for a general. It was for a legend. Four-star General Nathaniel Royce had served in 3 wars, decorated 26 times, known for commanding respect with few words and fewer mistakes. Some whispered he might have been Secretary of Defense had he not declined the offer, twice. Now he lay in a flag-draped casket, oak and brass, carried by 8 men who looked as though they would have followed him into fire. Rows of folding chairs stretched before the gravesite, filled with high-ranking officials, military brass, foreign attachés, and one former president. Everything was arranged to precision, right down to the minute, until a wrinkle walked in. Came from the sidewalk, leaning on a cane as if every step was a conversation with his knees. A faded duffel hung off his shoulder, swaying with each stride. His coat, more patches than fabric, had long since lost its shape, and his pants, though once dress blues, were sun-bleached and stained with time. But his eyes, steel gray and unflinching, didn't look lost. They looked like they had arrived. He approached the final checkpoint, a temporary security gate marked by 2 stone-faced MPs. On either side of him, black-suited agents flanked the ceremonial perimeter. eyes scanning the crowd, earpieces coiled tight. "Hold up, sir," said the taller guard, stepping forward, palm extended. "This is a secured area. Funeral invitation only." The old man looked past him. No sign of hearing. Or maybe he had, and simply didn't care. "I served with him," the man said quietly. His voice was raspy, worn by years of shouting. Orders or shouting just to be heard. The shorter MP, barely 22, looked uncertain. "Name, sir?" The man didn't answer. "Sir, please, do you have credentials? ID?" Still nothing. Then, slowly, the old man reached into the pocket of his coat and pulled out a dog tag. Old, bent, the chain nearly black. He held it out in his hand like an offering. The MP didn't take it. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step back." "No." The word landed heavy. Not loud, but final. From the side, a young staff sergeant leaned in and whispered something to the taller MP. They nodded and activated their radios. Somewhere across the funeral grounds, movement began. Eyes shifted, voices fell to whispers. Junior officer jogged toward a colonel standing near the procession, whispering urgently in his ear. The colonel's face changed. He glanced toward the man at the gate. And then everything stopped. The band fell silent mid-note. The casket bearers paused mid-step. And out from the line of officers stepped a figure no one expected to move. A man in his late 60s, medals heavy. On his chest, posture like stone, face unreadable. A 4-star general, the current head of the Army's Eastern Command, and General Royce's hand-picked funeral commander. He didn't ask, he didn't order, he just walked, across the grass. Past the rows of folding chairs, through the sea of polished boots and salutes. Until he reached the old man at the checkpoint, the MPs looked confused. They stepped aside instinctively. The general stopped 3 feet in front of the old man. The two locked eyes. "Tom?" the general said, voice barely above a whisper. The old man blinked, his jaw twitched. "Is that you?" The old man didn't smile, but his posture changed. Just a little, as if the weight of years had lifted, if only by a fraction. "Yes, sir," he rasped. "I heard he passed. I had to come." The general looked past him, toward the gathered brass and expectant eyes. Then he turned to the MPs and said with crisp finality, "He's with me." The guards stepped back. The general extended a hand. The old man hesitated, then shook it. Not out of obligation, but recognition, like two soldiers finding each other after a long patrol. The general then gestured to a nearby aide. "Bring a chair. Front row. Full honors." A murmur rippled through the crowd. As the band resumed, slow and somber, the old man stepped onto the sacred grounds, and everything about the ceremony changed. The sky wore a shroud of dull gray, and a slow drizzle descended over the immaculate white rows of headstones, soaking into the earth as if the heavens themselves had been summoned to weep. A stillness hung in the air, broken only by the distant rumble of ceremonial gunfire and the soft rustling of flags caught in the wind. This was not just any funeral. This was a spectacle of history, a final act of national remembrance. 4-star. General Nathaniel Royce, a name that graced history books, military textbooks, and speeches, was being laid to rest. It was the kind of event where protocol reigned supreme. Every second choreographed, every movement rehearsed, uniforms pressed to perfection, boots polished until the trees reflected in them. Secret Service agents stood discreetly along the perimeter, eyes shaded by sunglasses. Dignitaries whispered to one another in low voices. Camera crews from major networks positioned themselves for respectful but visible angles. A former president, 2 secretaries of defense, and 8 generals of varying rank sat under the large white canopy tent by the gravesite. The casket itself lay draped in the flag of a grateful nation. 13 folds to precision. 8 men flanked it, the honorary pallbearers, selected personally by Royce in a document sealed years before his death. Every detail had been arranged in advance. The songs, the readings, even the color of the floral arrangements. Royce had orchestrated his funeral like a final mission, efficient, powerful, dignified. Then the old man arrived. No one saw where he came from. One moment, the path was clear. The next, there he was, emerging like a ghost from the tree line, beyond the ceremony. His clothes told one story, weather-beaten, threadbare, wrinkled from sleep and rain. But his bearing told another. He moved with the slow confidence of someone who had not only seen war, but had survived it. He leaned heavily on a wooden cane, the rubber tip worn down almost to the core. On his head, a battered old cap, army green, sagged over one eye. The patch stitched to the front was nearly faded beyond recognition, but it was there. A forgotten unit insignia from a war most had forgotten. He walked as though each step cost him something, but that he'd pay it willingly. He crossed the road and headed toward the final checkpoint that led into the ceremonial grounds. The security team spotted him immediately. 2 military police officers, young, crisp, humorless, stepped into his path, their movements efficient, polite, and entirely unmoved by the man's appearance. "Hold it right there, sir," the taller one said, extending a gloved hand. "This is a secure area. Funeral is by invitation only." The old man didn't stop right away. He looked past them, eyes fixed on the casket, on the rows of uniforms, on the polished boots and fluttering flags. Then he stopped. Not because they told him to, but because he chose to. Slowly, he turned his face toward them, a face carved by time and weather and whatever it was that soldiers carried back from places they didn't talk about. "I served with him," he said quietly. The shorter MP frowned. "Sir, I understand, but do you have identification? Invitation?" The old man didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a pair of dog tags. They clinked softly as he held them up, old and scuffed. The chain kinked in 3 places. The numbers were barely visible, worn down by years of wear and sweat. The name was there, though. Hale, TM. Blood type, religion, service number. The whole life of a man reduced to stamped aluminum. The guards didn't move. "I came to pay my respects," he said. "I heard he passed. I had to come. Sir, we need to verify your credentials before we can let you in. Do you have anyone with you?" "I'm all that's left." The taller MP touched his earpiece and muttered something into the mic clipped to his collar. A pause, then a nod. He looked back at the man. "I'm going to have to ask you to wait. Here, someone's coming to speak with you." The old man looked past him again. The rain slid down the edge of his cap, dripping onto the collar of his coat. From across the field, under the ceremonial tent, a colonel stood and turned his head toward the commotion. He listened to the voice in his earpiece, scanned the crowd, then locked eyes on the scene at the gate. A moment later he strode forward, quick, purposeful steps. Behind him, silence fell among the dignitaries. A few whispered, others looked over their shoulders. The music from the army band faded out, trailing into the mist, and then everything stopped. From the far right of the formation, a tall man in a decorated dress uniform broke from the line. Epaulettes glinted under the clouds. A 4-star general, General Marcus Bell, current commander of U.S. Army Forces East, one of the most powerful officers in the military. He moved across the field without haste, without ceremony, without hesitation. The band did not resume. The funeral director stood frozen beside the folded programs. Even the media crews whispering into microphones hushed. He stopped in front of the old man. The guards stiffened to attention. They didn't salute. They didn't dare interrupt. General Bell looked at the man carefully. His face, usually stern and unreadable, softened. He opened his mouth once, said nothing, then tried again. "Tom," he said. The old man blinked. His jaw trembled just slightly. "You remember me?" the general asked. "I remember you when you were too green to shave," the man said. Bell smiled faintly. "You saved my life outside Quezon. You dragged me out under fire. You carried me 2 clicks with a hole in your own leg. The old man just shrugged. Didn't seem right to leave you. The general turned to the guards. He's with me, he said simply. Clear him. Escort him to the front. The MPs moved aside without a word. Bell leaned closer. You come this far alone? The old man nodded. Didn't want to trouble anyone. Just needed to say goodbye. You'll do more than that. He left instructions, Tom. He mentioned you by name. That caught him. His brows knit. He remembered? Never forgot, Bell said. Not for one day. A lieutenant jogged up with a chair. Bell took it and placed it directly beside the front row, in the place of honor where next of kin would usually sit. Sit here, he said. You're not a guest today. You're part of the reason we're all here. Tom Hale sat slowly, his knees stiff. As he lowered himself into the seat, the rain stopped. The band resumed. A lone bugler stood and raised his horn. The first note of taps cut through the air, and the funeral resumed, but it was no longer the same. It had changed. Not because of protocol, but because of a story no one had heard in full. A story that would unfold in the hours, days, and weeks to come. But for now, the old man sat quietly, head bowed, listening. He had arrived. The folding chairs had been stacked. The honor guard had marched away in disciplined unison, and the last of the dignitaries were being chauffeured back through the cemetery gates in black town cars and government-issued SUVs. The casket now lay beneath a clean white canvas of flowers, and the soft murmur of visitors had faded, replaced by the sound of the wind combing gently through the trees. But the old man hadn't moved. He sat where General Bell had placed him, in the lone chair still standing, eyes fixed on the plot where Nathaniel Royce had been lowered. His hat rested in his lap. He wasn't crying. He had done that already, decades ago, in silence and alone, where no one could see. He didn't believe in grieving for men like Royce with tears. You honored them by remembering. Bell returned. Quietly, now alone, cap in hand. He always said you'd outlive him, the general said with a small smile. I think he was half afraid of it. The old man chuckled. He never was much for sentiment. Said if he died in bed, he'd count. It a failure, Bell nodded. But even he couldn't dodge time. There was a silence, the kind shared only by soldiers who had known the weight of carrying another man's death long after the fight ended. Do you want to see it? Bell asked. See what? What he left you. Tom Hale turned. He left me something? Bell crouched beside the old man's chair. His voice dropped to a more private register. 10 years ago, Royce wrote letters to be opened upon his death. One went to the president, another to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, one to his daughter, and one was addressed to you. Tom blinked. I didn't even know he remembered me. He did more than remember you, Tom. He said you were the reason he ever got out of that jungle in '69. Said the army taught him tactics, but you taught him survival. Tom shifted in his seat. He looked away, into the distance, eyes narrowing. At the memory. We were just kids, he muttered, fighting like we knew what the hell we were doing. Most of the time we didn't. I just didn't want to leave anyone behind. You didn't, Bell said. You saved him. You saved a lot of us. Tom slowly stood. His knees popped, but he stood tall. I'd like to see that letter. Bell nodded. I have a car, the general said. We'll go to Fort Myer. You'll stay the night. Eat real food. Rest. Tom's face twisted into a smile that was half gratitude, half defiance. You sure they'll let me in looking like this? You're wearing more honor than most of them have medals, Bell replied. Come on. As the two walked slowly toward the motorcade waiting at the curb, a younger aide whispered to Bell, Sir, do you want background on Mr. Hale? No, Bell said, not turning. I already know who he is. You should too. The aide blinked. "Look, him up. Captain Thomas M. Hale, Recon 3rd Battalion, 75th Rangers. Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Silver Star. Distinguished Service Cross. Multiple citations. Then vanished. Vanished. After Nam, he disappeared. No fanfare, no parades, just walked away. But those who served with him, they never forgot. Fought." Maya, officer quarters. Later that evening, the room was modest, a temporary guest suite used for visiting officers or foreign dignitaries. Tom Hale sat in a chair by the window, now wearing a clean set of army sweatpants and a warm sweater, his duffel tucked beneath the table. On the desk was a sealed envelope, hand-addressed in a familiar, sharp, slanted scrawl. To Captain Thomas M. Hale, if I go before you do. Royce Tom stared at it for a long time. Belle sat nearby, silent. Finally, Tom picked up the envelope and slid a calloused finger beneath the flap. The paper inside was thick, cream-colored. Royce had written it by hand, no typewriter, no dictation. Just pen, ink, and the raw voice of a man writing not for history but for one person alone. Tom began to read aloud. "Tom, if you're reading this, it means I finally lost the race. I figured I might. You were always the tougher of the two of us, even when we were 23 and I thought I knew what I was doing. I never said thank you. Not the way I should. Have. Not when you dragged me across 3 ridgelines with half your blood on the leaves. Not when you covered for me that night in the village. Not when you stayed behind in Cambodia so the rest of us could make the rendezvous. I made a career. I made speeches. I met presidents. But the best decision I ever made, the only reason I got to do any of it, was you. I always knew you stayed away from the spotlight on purpose. You didn't want medals or glory. You just wanted the war to stay buried. But I couldn't let myself go without making this right, so I left instructions. If you showed up, and I prayed you would, I wanted them to stop everything for you, because what you did deserves more than memory. It deserves to be seen. We lost a lot of good men out there, Tom, but we didn't lose each other. And I carried you with me every day, from the jungles to the Pentagon. I'm at peace now. I hope you can be too. See you at the next post." Nate Tom folded the letter. With shaking hands, he didn't cry, but he looked out the window for a long time. Belle stood and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "You earned every second of that funeral, Tom." "I didn't go for honors," the old man said quietly. "I went because I owed him my goodbye. And he owed you his," Belle replied. Outside, the lights of the base glowed softly. The wind carried faint echoes from the past, bugles, rifles, names carved in stone. But for now, in this moment, one soldier's story was finally being told. Central Highlands, South Vietnam. March 4th, 1969. Operation Copper Shadow It was supposed to be a simple recon mission. The team had dropped from the belly of a CH-47 under cover of night, 30 clicks outside Pleiku, in the thick of a jungle. No one on the maps dared name. It wasn't in the papers, and officially they weren't even there. But the team of 8 men, lean, quiet, razor-eyed, knew the truth. This wasn't about maps or medals. This was about surviving the next 72 hours and making it home. Sergeant First Class Thomas M. Hale led the patrol. At 31, he was older than most of the others, a ghostly figure among greenhorns. His men called him Bones, not because he was thin, but because when he moved through the jungle, he was so silent it was like he'd already crossed into the afterlife. Second Lieutenant Nathaniel Royce was younger, by nearly 10 years, and newer. Fresh from OCS, face still smooth, voice still formal. He had good instincts, but not yet the rhythm. Hale had watched him closely from the moment they hit the LZ, not to judge, but to know. Could he keep up when the firefight started? They hiked, for nearly 10 miles that night. The air was heavy and thick with heat, sweat pooling in their boots. Insects the size of thumbnails buzzed past their faces. The jungle choked the moonlight, But Hale led with the kind of sixth sense only those who'd seen real blood and real mud could develop. At 0300, the signal came through on the long-range radio. Possible NVA supply route 2 clicks east of current. Position. Move. Observe. Do not engage unless compromised. They moved. By morning, they found the trail and the bodies. 4 U.S. soldiers, stripped, executed, mutilated. Booby traps laced in the trees. A message in blood painted across a fallen log. Go home. Royce turned white. Hale said nothing. He disarmed the nearest grenade trap and waved his men forward. They set up surveillance and waited. Hours passed. Then, movement. Dozens of NVA soldiers, silent as the wind, marching a small convoy. Weapons. Crates, radio equipment, Royce whispered. Sir, that's... Hale cut him off with a gesture. They recorded, photographed, logged everything. Then, a snap, not a twig. A radio chirp. One of the rookies, Private Dawson, had forgotten to switch to silent mode. That was all it took. Suddenly gunfire erupted, sharp, controlled bursts. Their cover blown, the jungle came alive with enemy fire. Back! Hale roared. They sprinted, Royce stumbling through vines and mud, Dawson already down. Hale grabbed the lieutenant by the collar and dragged him into a ravine. Stay low, he shouted, returning fire. The team scattered, 3 dead in minutes. 2 wounded, Royce took a round through the thigh and collapsed. I can't walk, he gasped. You don't need to, Hale growled. He hoisted Royce onto his back, rifle slung one-handed, and moved. Not fast, not recklessly, but like a machine built for one thing, survival. He led the survivors, just 4 now, deeper into enemy territory, away from the known patrol lines, trusting the chaos to mask their escape. They moved for 12 hours. No food, no rest. Royce passed out halfway through. Hale kept going. By dusk, the rain fell like stones. They reached a ridge. Below, a radio relay. A CIA outpost. Unofficial, unmarked. They were saved. 2 weeks later, Camp Holloway Field Hospital, Royce woke to pain and brightness. His leg was wrapped tight. His chest ached. Beside him, Hale sat, still in field gear, boots caked in dried red clay. Figured you'd pull through, Hale said. Royce tried to speak. Couldn't. You kept asking if I was crazy, Hale said, smirking. Probably, but I don't leave my men. Ever. Royce managed a rasp. Why? Because we all come home, Hale said. Or none of us do. A long silence. I owe you. Royce whispered. No, you don't. But someday you'll remember. He stood. I don't do speeches, just actions. Then he left, as silently as he'd arrived. Back to the present. Fort Myer Guest Quarters, 2025. Tom Hale opened the small metal box Bell had given him. Inside, neatly folded, was a faded photograph. 8 men sitting on ammo crates, grinning, Royce in the middle. Hale standing behind him, a hand on his shoulder. On the back, in Royce's handwriting, to the man who taught me how to live before I learned how to lead. Nate, Arlington National Cemetery. 3 days after the funeral, the old man came back. This time, he wore his service jacket. No medals, just the patch of the 75th Rangers on the sleeve. Faded, but still proud. The cemetery was quiet. No cameras, no admirals, no booming rifle volleys, just morning fog drifting across the field of stone, and a grave still fresh with flowers, wreaths, and a folded flag tucked beside a white marble headstone. Jennifer Nathaniel Royce, 1946, 2025. He led because he followed. Tom stood in silence. He wasn't here to be seen. He was here to finish something. From his coat pocket, he pulled out a small leather-bound journal. It had been his since '69, its pages crinkled, yellowed, smudged with rain, sweat, and sometimes blood. It held names, coordinates, snippets of poetry, and drawings, crude, shaky, of men he couldn't afford to forget. Royce had a page. A good one, smiling, alive. Tom tore it out, folded it, and knelt. He tucked it gently into the earth beneath a bouquet. "I didn't forget," he whispered. "I never did." Behind him, a soft crunch of footsteps on gravel. He didn't need to. Turn. General Bell stood respectfully, holding a small wooden box. "They found this in Royce's things," he said quietly. "Said he wanted it to go to whoever saved his life in the jungle." Tom took it. Inside was a lighter. Old. Engraved. "One fire saves another." Tom stared at it for a long moment. "I thought this burned in Cambodia." "It did," Bell said. "Royce had it remade. Said no soldier should die without his spark." Tom closed the box. "I'm not dying yet," Bell smiled. "I didn't think so." A silence passed between them. Then Bell added, "The president asked if you'd accept a posthumous commendation on Royce's behalf. Said it would mean more." "Coming from you?" Tom shook his head slowly. He already got what he wanted. He just wanted me to show up. And I did, he thought. Finally. Months later, Military History Museum, Washington, D.C. In a quiet wing of the museum, away from the tanks, the spotlights, the glory walls, a new exhibit had opened. Simple, just a glass case, a few photos. Battered ranger patch, a page from a field journal, and a sign. In honor of Captain Thomas M. Hale, the soldier who walked away so others could come home. Visitors rarely lingered, but some, especially veterans, would stop, read, nod. And if you listened closely, you might hear them say his name like a ghost. Bones. Epilogue. Some stories are shouted, others are whispered. Some soldiers are remembered with statues, others with silence. But the greatest heroes, they never ask to be seen. They just show up when it matters most.